Present are myself, Commissioners Anderson, Mills, Shackleton, Hedstrom, Bibi Guduce. Absent is Benson. And we'll start with the agenda. The agenda was included in the packet. Is there a motion to approve the April 15th, 2025 agenda?
I approve it.
All support.
Awesome.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item are the minutes of our March 18th, 2025 meeting. You'll find those in the packet in pages 2 through 4. Is there a motion to approve the March 18th, 2025 meeting minutes?
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, next agenda item is a review of the financials, and those start on page 5 and actually go through, inclusive of Superior National Golf Course, through page 14. And at this point, I wish to turn it over to Commissioner Shackleton.
So referring to the EDA balance sheet and profit and loss statement, the one note to mention here is that the EDA received a $216,000 payment from the state of Minnesota for some FEMA work at the golf course. And so that's reflected in the statements here. That money has been transferred to the golf course, so you can disregard that when you see it. So the only mention I would make too on the balance sheet for the EDA is that we've had a lot of activity with the grant applications, and if we were to fully fund all the grant applications as of this week, it'd be about $156,000 out, considering our $200,000 budget for the year. And then considering expenses going forward till June, when we receive the first levy payment, it could be tight. I wouldn't, if another $25,000 grant request came in, I would caution, depending upon when we started to pay out some of these grants that we've, let's say, approved. So we might want to just consider that for our levy payment in June, so.
When in June is that payment typically?
About first or second week we
Okay,
get
early
about
June.
60%
Okay.
of our funding.
We show some money market, we show money in money market. Is that liquid or is that,
Yeah, it is liquid, but the balance is about 220. If you minus payables, we're about 220. Under 56 going out. Another
okay,
30, 45 for expenses to get us through June.
got
And
it.
so that's where we're kind of looking at it tight.
Right.
If everything pencils out accurately, it's about a $20,000 cushion, but that's projecting out to mid-June.
Okay.
You know, so it's a little tight, that's all.
Okay. We'll discuss, I think, in much more detail the grant program later in the meeting, but one of the things that has been, I think, at least initially discussed is bucketing
Correct, yeah.
the
It
applications,
might
and that
be-
can help
yeah, correct,
time the
yeah.
payouts as well.
So if anyone has any questions on the EDA, I'll move it to the golf course.
Okay.
Okay. Golf course stage, balance sheet looks healthy, there's cash in there, there's enough to get us through the golf course, to the golf course season when cash flow improves. The one big difference between this year versus last year is the payroll expenses. We have 6 people on salary this year versus only 2 last year, so there's a bump up in pay for labor, so that'd be the only note I've noticed the difference. Any questions on the golf course?
Not necessarily in the financials, but I was looking at the equipment list, and I somehow it only lists like 18 golf carts, that those are owned and the rest are leased, so that,
Well, those are the ones that will be leased in the future. So they own all the golf course. They purchased 72 golf carts last
Yeah.
year, and so that's
But they-
owned by the golf course.
but they weren't listed in the equipment for some reason.
And cap,
Yeah, well, that, I saw it in the,
it, well, I mean, are you talking for the capital expenditures for next year?
No, equipment inventory.
Oh, in the inventory.
And for some reason, it shows 8 rental, 5 maintenance. They don't show the rest. I figured they had
You mean as an
a lot
asset?
more self-corrects than that.
Yeah, you're saying as an asset?
It's on page 10.
Oh, I'm looking at-
Page 10 is what I'm looking at.
I can,
Okay, so this is the budget. Okay. Yeah.
Like I say, it's not a budget question. It's
Oh, I
just
see,
general.
okay, inventory, okay.
Yeah.
That would be under clubhouse, wouldn't it?
You're just saying they have more than that?
Yeah,
Hmm.
that doesn't have to be answered right now.
Yeah, I'll look at it, but I think it's separated by clubhouse and maintenance. Geez, Lord.
well, we can take that as homework.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
we'll do
Yeah,
that.
that's
Yeah,
fine.
no need to
Yeah.
answer
Okay.
right now.
Any other questions or discussion points related to the budget?
Move we,
Send
Send to audit,
Is that how the-
whatever
that
we do,
it?
yes.
Yeah, that movement.
yes, I'll make that motion.
Very
I'll
good.
second.
Thank you. I don't believe that needs a vote. Okay. Next agenda item is public comments. So if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to approach the front table and a microphone, please do so now.
Mr. President,
Yes.
as a resident of Cook County, I would like to provide some public comment before we delve into the remainder of our agenda.
Certainly.
Great.
I'll probably hop down there just to present a clear division between my position as commissioner and
Very good.
resident. Okay?
Turn your hat around, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my name is Alex B.B. Giudice, and in 2022, my family moved to Grand Marais from Juneau, Alaska, to open Superior Creamery. This May, we're going to start our 4th summer serving homemade ice cream to our friends and our family and visitors to Cook County from around the country and the world. It's a big year for us. We're streamlining. There have been changes in the past 12 months that we've made regarding what we offer. Things are improving, our sales are increasing, and we're making a really gradual and deliberate entrance into the wholesale market. So that's exciting. This is our exploratory year for that. We're going to lay the framework, so in 2026, we can hopefully start distributing our product a little bit beyond Cook County. Nothing too crazy. Some of you are familiar with that plan. We were a recipient of the Business Fund Development Program grant. We applied for the maximum amount of $25,000 last September. The project for which we were seeking funding was to purchase the building that we have been conducting business in since 2022. We followed the process to a T. It was deliberate. It took a while. It was intentional. And at the end of the day, we were incredibly grateful to get a check for $25,000 after we closed on our property January of this year. By submitting the application back in September, we were fully aware that just because we were applying for an eligible project didn't mean that we would receive grant funds. That's part of the process. You apply, your application's vetted, and the committee and the board make a decision on whether or not to issue you funds. So, thanks for investing in our business. Not all of you are part of that decision, but all of you will be part of decisions moving forward. I wanted to just talk about a couple things that we're most grateful for. So first of all, our funding package, right, was a mix of, the backbone was a traditional loan through our bank. The second component was a low-interest loan through the IRRR. That was an extensive application process that I was thankful that the Business Development Fund application process was as thorough as it was, because I was able to utilize a lot of what I presented to this organization in that IRRR application, which is just as intense as a traditional bank loan. We're grateful for this ability that this ownership of our building now provides us. We have physical stability, which means we'll have a roof over our heads for longer than the 10 years that we signed in our lease back in 2022. We have financial stability as well for our business beyond the end of that lease. Long-term planning is a big part of why we wanted to buy our building. In order to complete renovations that we needed to grow, we needed to customize our space. Our landlord was very gracious, but at a certain point they drew a line saying, I'm not comfortable with you customizing this facility beyond what you've already done, which makes sense. Now that we own the building, we can make a financial plan to complete the needed improvements that we need to grow our business, expand into wholesale, and continue growing our storefront sales. That's going to be 3 years or so. We're looking at over $150,000 of additional improvements just to achieve those benchmarks we described to you last October. The third part is revenue diversification, and this is wholly tied to wholesale. We need to expand our sales beyond the storefront. Most of our business is hyper-seasonal. It's between June and August. June 1, August 31st, that's when we make, 75% of our income. And as many of you know, it's pretty smart, it's wise if you can to diversify your revenue stream, which is why we're looking into wholesale. We've had great luck with the kind of test pilot accounts that we've been working with since September. Our goal here, starting next fall, is to generate income year-round with a strong focus on wholesale in the off-season and store front sales in the summer. Does that make sense?
Yes?
Okay. So by owning the building, it unlocks the access to make the improvements on the facility that we need to accommodate that goal efficiently in accordance with industry standards. So it's a success story. We're not quite done with our project yet. We have bought the building. We're working on improvements. I do want to talk about the application process a little bit, right? And this is where my testimony as a taxpayer in Cook County, I think, is important to the discussion that may happen later today. I think there's a really strong need for clear and transparent requirements for applicants and project eligibility. The document starts off with intentional flexibility in the opening paragraph, and while I think there is room for intentional flexibility, I do think that eligibility is something that shouldn't be flexible. In my mind, eligibility is something that is determined based on criteria. The flexibility part might come into play when determining if an application aligns with the EDA's strategic plan. So I think moving forward, as you consider the guidelines, perhaps consider clear and transparent requirements. In our particular situation, it was unclear throughout the entire application process if purchase of building was or was not an eligible expense. We were told it was, we were told it was not, we were told it was, but only for certain types of businesses. Ultimately, what happened was we reached a consensus and our application was brought to the finish line, largely in part due to two of the commissioners on the review committee. They worked with us, they helped us align our mission with yours. I think the thought was common, we had shared an interest, we just had two different ways of looking at it. But when it comes to criteria, eligibility is something that you probably need to think about standardizing and keeping clear and consistent. As far as grant agreements go, there are a bunch of different grant agreements out there floating around the internet. As part of my preparation for our application, as I read as many of them as I could to see what I was getting myself into, and what I learned was every application agreement is different. I'm not going to go into details, but I would encourage you to standardize that, at least to the point where similar project types have similar grant agreement language. So everybody that's buying a building has more or less the same expectations of them as the other person. Likewise with equipment purchase, for instance. that language looks the same as well regarding grantee responsibilities and the grantor responsibilities. The last part of this is just the transparency in the public process. I know the EDA has been in transition for over a year with different commissioners, different director. We now have a new consultant as well. I think it's really important to make a goal of this committee moving forward, particularly as it pertains to this program, which is almost 38% of the levy request, right? It's a lot of money, $200,000. We just talked about that. I would respectfully request that we make an effort, the EDA makes an effort to maintain transparency, keep approved grant applications that are being considered public, keep confidential or sensitive information about those businesses private, but publish the agreements that the EDA is making on behalf of the Cook County taxpayers and the applications for which they're granting funds. So that's it. We're having great. This season we're 18 strong. Retention rate is nearly 100%. 2 of our team members are international students. The rest are Cook County adults and high schoolers. This year we're looking at adding at least one more year-round position in the next 12 months, and we're right on schedule with a deliberate plan for growth. So that was my report. I haven't formally done one, but I felt the need to today to share a positive experience with the program, one that took some time, but we got to the finish line and we're really grateful. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
If there are no other public comments, I'm going to turn it over to Heidi, who has actually brought a written submission with her from a resident.
That's the thing, is I meant to bring the written submission with me so I could read it word for word to you all. But I'm going to summarize it, and what I propose to do is include the written public comment in the minutes for the meeting after the fact, if that's okay. So I received an email yesterday from one of the applicants for the Business Development Fund grant program. She asked that it be submitted under public comment and asked me to read her comment on her behalf because she's unable to be here today. But this public comment is from, like I said, an applicant for the grant program. She had applied back in January 2025 for the program. Her business, and this is public information, and she approved for me to talk about what her business is. Her business is Timber and Tide Cabins. It's a new business. It's a startup. Basically, in a nutshell, her application was reviewed by the Grant Review Committee, but not approved, and so therefore the full EDA board never received a copy of her application or even really knew that this application came through. It was an application for $25,000 to repair 2 rooftops, pretty much. Very simple application. The summary of her public comment is that she understands that the EDA is discussing changes and amendments to the grant program guidelines and application, and she is suggesting that the EDA board, all 7 of you, approve some sort of language in the guidelines or criteria that specifies the types of businesses that are eligible and not eligible for this program. Because the reason being is in the current guidelines and criteria, her application simply to replace rooftops for her business was listed as an eligible project. So she didn't quite understand why she was denied the application. And she'd be happy, she told me to pass this on to all of you to answer any questions about her concern or her comments. And I'd be happy to pass on her phone number, her email to you all. She owns another business in town right now. Her name's Gina Joyce, and I'll give her contact information to whoever wants it after the meeting. But that was her public comment, and And I guess I can't answer too many questions because those are her comments and not mine. But there you go.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is our first resolution, and this is Resolution 2025-16, approving the WTIP North Shore Community Radio Annual Underwriting Contract. We discussed this in our last meeting and reached a consensus to move forward, but we've now got it in the form of this resolution because we've got the contract, and this is in pages 15 through 17 with WTIP. It's $2,080 for a 12-month period. As I mentioned in our last meeting, there was a rather boilerplate and never updated underwriting script that had been developed before we ceased continuation of that underwriting relationship with WTIP. So we challenged the station to come up with something to refresh that, speaking specifically to the business grant development program. So I'll try to put my best radio voice forward here, but this is a draft of the new script, which is one of the homework items from our last meeting. So local programming on WTIP is supported in part by the Cook County Grand Marais Economic Development Authority, whose Business Development Fund grant program is here to support local startups and established businesses located in Cook County with funding opportunities. Business owners can learn more and check if their business qualifies online at cookcountymneda.org.
That's not what I see.
What you see is, as indicated, is the previous
I see.
version.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, this is the new script that we just got today.
Okay.
That's the kind of the boilerplate
Right.
general.
Okay.
We thought it was too general. So.
Okay.
In any case, it focuses on the business
Mhm.
development grant. So we can absorb it.
Yeah.
We can tweak that as
Right.
often as we need to. Say in the future, as I mentioned before, when we're maybe surveying Cook County on Taconite Harbor input, that's a message that we can do on WTIP, amongst other
Right.
outlets. Questions, comments?
I was going to move the resolution so we could talk about it.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Support.
Okay, discussion?
I think it's a good idea. Back before I retired, owned a business, we had the same kind of thing in the ongoing contract, and I think we had developed several little
Underwriting messages.
messages, and then they'd rotate them.
Yep.
And I like the idea of given time available to our director, to refresh those to what's hot for the moment, you might say.
Exactly,
So-
yeah. Yeah, and the radio station's quite flexible in that
Yeah.
regard. Other comments? Do I have a future in the radio business?
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
I think as long as, we're updating that message, I would
Yep.
seriously look at it at least once a month, to
Sure.
make sure that we put eyes on it
Yep.
and maybe tweak it.
Yep, agreed. In fact, we can make that part of
Right.
our
I would-
monthly
yeah, I
meeting.
think
so-
that would be appropriate.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, so all those in favor of Resolution 2025-16 regarding the WTIP contract?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Next resolution is 2025-17, approving Business Development Fund grant agreement with Unimoose Enterprises LLC for a total amount not to exceed $25,000. And you'll find the details on pages 18 through 24. And it's my understanding that that Matt is here, is that right?
Yes.
Great. Hello. So the material is in the deck, but as many of you would be aware, Unimoose is a welding and fabrication enterprise that's been in business now for a couple of years, I think. Is that right? Okay. 3 years, and is in the process of expanding. And this grant speaks to equipment purchases to support that expansion.
So Peter and Heidi, I'm not sure if you guys received it, but I did send you a revised copy of the application early this afternoon. Is that the copy that everybody had received, or?
The copy.
You might move to the microphone for the
Yes, please.
recording purpose.
In answer to your question, no, the latest copy was not provided in their packet. They received the original, your original application.
Okay.
Like Friday, yeah.
So the only thing that I had changed between the original application that you had all received and reviewed and the application that I had just submitted early this afternoon was after getting some clarification information regarding the total grant amount.
Yep.
My initial understanding was that the grant total, or project total, I guess those were the words that I confused, was for $25,000. Of that $25,000, I needed to match 25% of that. I then was told by Heidi that the total project cost would be no more than, or no, I think no less than $31,125, if I remember that correctly.
31,250 would be the project size for
The
a
maximum size.
25,000 grant.
Correct.
Yeah. So what is the request for? Is this for 25?
Yes.
So
Yes.
the current, or the revised request in that application that I submitted was for $24,000 even.
Okay.
The total project cost being $30,026.49.
Okay, the request plus 25%.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
But fundamentally, the equipment that's being procured, the plan, it's all the same.
Still accomplishes
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same premise.
Understood.
Everything is still the same. It was just some additional equipment that would help expedite things and make life easier on my end.
Okay. So the grant request is actually slightly less than what we see here.
As I understand, for you to meet your 25% input, the grant has to be slightly less.
I'm not sure if I
He
understand.
said, it- he's,
Yeah, I think you said it correctly.
Yeah. He's requesting 24 for a 30,000
Yes.
something project.
Got it.
Correct.
Yep.
Commissioner Mills?
Can we have more details on what those changes are?
Absolutely. So the additional equipment provided, I was also able to provide accurate quotes as of today. But there was a quote from Ariat Manufacturing to drill all of the Guardian fire suppression unit pipes for 20 units. There was a quote from Russell Steel to procure 2 3/16 by 4x8 sheets to plasma cut out the feet for those Guardian fire suppression units, a rotary welding positioner to weld those feet to the pipes, and the pipe themselves. Those were the changes that I made to the agreement, or the application, I apologize.
Thank you.
Discussion or?
I just wanted to add a comment. So this is an example of why the Grant Review Committee is trying to clarify the guidelines, is because of this confusion, I think, even I was confused when I was first looking at it, and Matt and I had a chance to talk about this late last week, and really understanding, so the match, the 25% match requirement is based on the total project cost. Now, if you could, Alex, if you could explain this better for me, or anyone on the grant
Yeah,
review committee.
so we'll get into this in more detail. The review committee, Commissioners Anderson and Shackleton, we spent a lot of time figuring out how we can simplify the language to make it as user-friendly as possible, because it isn't, and it hasn't been for a little bit, maybe just in the last 4 months, but anyway, we'll move forward. But the matching requirement is a percentage of the grant request that the applicant or the grantee is required to invest in the project for which they are seeking funds. Correct? Yeah, so,
I don't think that, yeah.
We'll talk about it. I'm actually going to ask the educators on this committee and some other folks that are good at writing in a way that's easily understood to help us craft the specific language in the new guidelines moving forward. Because there is some ambiguity, there is some confusion, but the idea is the matching required has to be spent on the project, not just held in your pocket and demonstrated.
Yeah, I think the input we got from previous EDA director, Marais, who's explained the way in which the money can be allocated to make sure that the match is met. It's just when a recipient who's gotten the award turns in receipts, if they need to have a 25% match, then they get only 25% back, or 75% back of whatever that receipt was for. So in order to receive $25,000, you would have had to have spent $31,000, $1,025, whatever. So that's a way of thinking about it. Does that help?
Yes.
Let's talk about the grant program during the agenda item for the grant program.
Sure.
I just
Let's talk
wanted to
about
thank you
Unimus
for
now.
dealing with the confusion, and your new application fits, and it is exactly what we needed, so thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
And do you want to say
On
anything?
Unimus, any other questions or comments on Unimus?
Sure.
No? Yes.
After Commissioner.
After
Yes.
Alex.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for a clear and concise application that included all of the elements that we needed to make an endorsement, whether or not they were required. I think the review committee appreciated the backstory of your company, including the earnings that you made in your first couple years, and your projections that aligned were all very realistic and promising. I like what you're doing. It's something that is in a industry that not many of our applications kind of delve into, manufacturing, metal manufacturing. And I'm particularly excited about the innovation you showed with your firewall guardian suppression systems. That's an exciting kind of small part of your business that I think will grow. So thanks for a great application. Thanks for putting some time into it and working with us as we navigate into the future.
Thank you.
Commissioner
I was
Mills.
waiting for a question, but
No, just to state.
that's a great comment. And forgive me for not being more familiar, and clearly, there's a lot of confusion, but so the pipes and the sheets, like, there's materials involved here that are beyond, like, for this one project, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and the tools can be used for your business, right?
For the business
Yeah.
after the fact, but
Exactly.
they're specifically tailored for
For
this
this,
project.
yeah. And so I guess just my question is that a typical application for the grants, is to have materials for a project? I mean, clearly tools, because that's building the business, right? But that was just something that stood out as like, oh, is this,
I think in the past, people have gotten printers and also ink, so I mean, that would be kind of the same thing,
yeah, yep. Thank you.
paper, you know.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Howard.
Done a lot of welding myself and hired welders and worked with welders. I've never had one show up with a tie.
My line of work, you know better than most. You don't get many opportunities to wear one, so I'll take any chance I can.
I assumed you were coming from a wedding.
Uh-huh.
I assumed you were coming from a wedding, but.
Well, funnily enough, this is my wedding suit. Good eye.
Yeah, I'm not going to question that statement.
Thank you for your professionalism.
Very much.
All right, so we'll close discussion, and all those in favor of Resolution 2025-17 for Unimus?
Aye.
Any opposed?
One abstain, just to make sure.
Right. Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right, taking us to Resolution 2025-18, approving the Business Development Fund Grant Agreement with Ruby Loon Graphics LLC for a total amount not to exceed $6,000. The details of the Ruby Loon application can be found in the packet starting on page 25. It's 25 through 34. And as I understand it, Jessica Jacobson-Smith is actually in attendance here. Hi, Jessica, thanks for joining us, if any questions come up. But this is an apparel decorating company filling an unmet need currently in Cook County, a new business. And I'll just give you a moment to, if you haven't looked at the material yet, to breeze over the material.
I have, yeah.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2025-18 for $6,000.
Now, second?
To Commissioner Mills and Shackleton. Discussion? Or questions for Jessica? Commissioner Mills?
So
I'll
this,
say-
this is a situation where an applicant could have, say, also thrown in $10,000 of sweatshirts. Okay. I'm just learning about this.
Inventory, you mean?
Right, yep. I'm just learning about the program, My first grant review meeting was just the other day, and so I'm getting caught up here, but thank you.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to make another comment. Thank you for the time you put into this. It was not just a one-time exchange of information. We requested additional follow-up to kind of enhance your application. It was wonderful. Your portfolio was appreciated, and I think evidenced the skill that you have in this trade that you're about to get into. So, good work. Thanks.
Any-
I have one more comment.
Please.
Again, thank you for helping us, or being patient as we navigated through your application in the process. And I also wanted to add, for those who don't know, both of these grant applications came to us through the SBDC. So, and most of the applications for this grant program do come to us through the SBDC. And Pete is here today, the EDA's SBDC consultant, and he helped both applicants through the process, along with former consultant Pat Campanero. So we just really appreciate all of the extra help and the extra meetings that applicants and our SBDC consultants put into these applications to make it a successful program.
Thanks, Heidi. Commissioner Hedstrom?
Well, this, to me, just regardless of our application process, is the right kind of thing that EDA should be doing, is helping start up businesses like this locally. So, are you aware of Dave Steckelberg? Do you know Dave? He used to do this some years ago.
Was he set out screen printing? Was he set out screen printing?
Yeah, he had a big screen printer, big
Oh, what-
roundabout thing, yeah. I don't know.
Was that a name, or the name of the building, or?
I think so.
Oh, okay. That might have been
Well, whatever.
Mike Swindlehurst.
Yeah, but anyway, it's nice to have this capability local, so happy to see you doing this.
I'll say, I'm on the faculty at Bemidji State, and I say, go Beavers. Like, your alum, or your faculty would be very proud of you for all the work you put into doing this and the way you're showing how to make that degree work for you.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Great, terrific, thank you. All right, so with discussion, I think, complete, all those in favor signify by saying aye on Resolution 2025-18.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right, taking us to our next agenda item, and that is the SBDC report, page 35, and I invite our new-ish SBDC representative, Pete Mott.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Peter Mott, the consultant with the Small Business Development Center here in Grand Marais, and I'm very happy to report to you today continued brisk visits and business down at the office in downtown Grand Marais. This month, we had 30 client meetings compared to 33 last month. We saw 5 new startup businesses through our doors this month that we're working on currently. And several of the businesses are existing businesses that are either looking to expand or looking to work more closely with our human resources clients or with our human resources professionals to develop tailored programs to meet their seasonal work demand. So we're getting into some exciting conversations with some small businesses who are looking at providing more benefits to some of our seasonal workers. So that's been an exciting new element to the discussions this month. Like I mentioned, there are a mix of existing clients that we've been working with for several months and new clients that have come in the door. We are getting referrals from a wide variety of people, and I wanted to express my appreciation for those clients who have come to the SBDC through EDA contacts. That is really a great way for me to connect with people who are clearly interested in the economic vitality of our community, and your willingness to partner with me and send those folks to me is important to me and the work my organization does, so we really appreciate that relationship. Right now, our clients are very diverse. You've seen a couple today, but we are really dealing with things from retail to restaurants, from sweets to sweats, and everything in between. Thank you.
Nice.
I've really appreciated in my short time here the work I've done with the director. Director Krampitz has been an extraordinary resource for me, not just in understanding my work, having previously been in a similar position, but also connecting me with the work you guys are doing and making sure that I provide a consistent set of communication pieces to you, whether they come in the form of these grant applications or other business-related items. I'm very appreciative of that help.
Thank you.
Let's see. So I'm very excited to, kind of work or understand how the EDA is developing their business development grant criteria and program, and I look forward to working closely to make sure that the clients I bring to the group are well attuned to what you guys are looking for. The transition is in full effect. Pat, while she keeps contact with me and she regularly checks in with me, she has kind of given up her keys and she's kind of flying into her new adventures, which is kind of exciting in and of itself. So I just appreciate the work, and I'm enjoying working with the clients. And if there's ever a time that anyone needs to reach out to me with questions or they just want to talk about something, I encourage that to happen, and I look forward to that. And that's all I have.
So, Pat is so self-sufficient, I haven't caught up with her lately, but, over the years, first working through UND and then with Northland Foundation, she relied, on the back office, you might say, of experts in those organizations. Are you tapping into that and getting the same kind of support, or enough support?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
That's one of the key resources that she connected me with are these subject matter experts,
Yeah.
which allow me to kind of, depending on what issue comes up with a client, explore whether or not I have resources beyond my skill set to bring to the table.
Okay.
And so that has been very rewarding.
Good, yeah.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Pete.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Commissioner Clissold, just a
Yes.
quick question. So this final report from Pat she's no longer providing consultant services with the Small Business Development Center?
As of end of the month.
End of the
March,
month, okay.
yeah.
And then that's, okay.
Well, the end of which month?
March.
Well,
Last month,
I
yeah.
believe that she's accrued about 10 hours in April as some projects continued to hand off to Pete.
Okay.
So it's not a final report, sort of.
That's my
That's final.
question, is if,
Yeah.
Yeah.
From
if-
Pat, you mean?
yeah,
Oh,
if she's going to continue logging hours
I
or
don't know,
not.
I
No,
thought she,
that might be
I
it.
thought there was a goodbye letter I read earlier. So
Yes.
I think she's done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
After those 10 hours.
yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, taking us to our discussion items, one of which we've already got at least started on, but the first one is the Business Development Fund Grant Program. And I'd refer you to pages 36 through 38 in the packet. And I'm going to turn it over to Heidi and Commissioner Beebe.
Thank you. I'll just provide a brief introduction, history and introduction. So back on April 16th, 2024, so a year ago, program guidelines were created for this program. So there were no guidelines prior. So the Grant Review Committee at the time worked with the former director and created the guidelines that are currently existing. So new guidelines. It may not be a brand-new program, but it's the program is starting to develop its structure and improving. For those at home, the way the program is funded, and Alex talked about this earlier, about 38% of the EDA's annual budget goes towards this program. And the EDA is funded through an annual property tax levy. So the EDA is funded through property taxes of the community. I think that's important to always keep in mind, that how we're funded and keeping as excellent stewards of the taxpayer dollars that we're supposed to be operating. So far this year, in 2025, we have received, well, actually, it's updated because I received another one yesterday. So the EDA has received 8 grant applications for this program in 2025. There's still a couple under review. The Grant Review Committee has met 11 or 12 times, either reviewing applications, reviewing the guidelines. So the Grant Review Committee is very, very busy and working hard and doing an awesome job. My part in this, I just wanted to go over the process, especially for those at home watching, of once an application comes in, what is the process for approval? So briefly, so the applications come into me mostly via email or hard copy, but mostly via email. Once I receive the application, I forward it as fast as I can to the Grant Review Committee. And before that, there is a standing Grant Review Committee of 3 people, but there oftentimes alternates have to step in due to different conflicts of interest with the applications. So once it's determined who is reviewing what application, then the Grant Review Committee meets. They hold a meeting, review the application. Oftentimes, there are follow-up questions, whether the application is incomplete or just there's some curiosity from the Grant Review Committee, has some questions about the application. So then I go back to the applicant and provide those questions to the applicant directly. Once the applicant responds with the answers to the question or the request for information, then the Grant Review Committee decides whether or not to forward the application to this full EDA board of 7 people. Once the application reaches this board and this meeting, that's when the application is approved. So that's the process. There is a process, and it does take a while, and that's it. I just wanted to make sure that the process is known out there in the community, and it's helpful for the review team too, since they're so busy and meeting so often, that the committee knows that the volunteer committee is working through these applications as fast as they possibly can, because we don't have deadlines for the program yet. So as the applications come in, they're reviewed, and then the funds are provided on a first-come, first-served basis. $200,000 annually budgeted each year for this program. That's it. And now, I believe Alex is going to summarize all of the work that the committee has been doing as far as the guidelines.
So I think, does everybody have access to a draft that was shared with the committee? 'Cause we're not going to read it, but if you would like to, for your convenience, reference it. We'll hit a few points. But again, the most important, I think, component of this is that the work that went into the guidelines in 2024 was substantial, and we're not doing a complete restructuring of this, as most young grant programs go. You try it out for a year, you see how it went, and then you look forward and see how you can keep making it even better with the foundation that's already in place. So that's what we're doing here. So the first section is program objectives. The only addition that I'd like to make to this section, and this is based on the review committee's work, is we need to include a reference to the strategic plan, the overall mission of the EDA. Everything that the review committee does, the applications that they process and the recommendations they make should be in alignment with the strategic plan of the EDA. Outside of that, there's a sentence that says this program is intentionally flexible. So I want you to keep that in the back of your head as we move forward. That can mean a lot of things. Perhaps ambiguity is a synonym for that phrase. So just kind of remember that. Our goal here is to administer a grant program that are based on guidelines that align with the EDA strategic plan. So that's kind of our framework moving forward. The idea is that this program is transferable in its administration. So regardless of who the director is, who the business consultant is, who sits on this table on the board, it can be implemented the same way and achieve the same results, right? No matter who's involved. That's our goal. Moving forward, eligible applicants, I think there's the biggest thing I think that we hear about this is residency. Should residency in Cook County be a requirement to receive grant funding? The review committee discussed this. We don't recommend requiring it. However, we do recommend including a section on the application that allows the applicant to elaborate, describe, demonstrate their commitment, their connection to Cook County, which is important to all of us. So the geographical requirement, however, does ask that the applicant is registered as a business entity with the state of Minnesota, and their business is located here, providing services here. That's the extent of the eligibility for applicants that the review committee is presenting. I would like to make a recommendation as a commissioner that we consider adding to the application, instead of business name, registered business name, and then provide a place for them to provide their doing business as. A lot of us do business as or under an assumed name, and right now that's missing from the application, pretty important part of it. I'll submit that to Director Krampus, so we can perhaps consider that in the future. Other than that, the only exclusions are cities, towns, and local units of government. So I guess my question for the board here, as this is a discussion, what are your recommendations for applicant eligibility based on what we have here in front of us? Is there a need to enhance them, scale them back? Is there any sort of criteria that we'd like to introduce, perhaps considering the type of business or the services they provide?
Chairman?
Commissioner Hedstrom.
You know, be so formal. Of course, I've been around longer than anybody here, and I agree there has been ambiguity and openness and confusion, but you understand too that over the many years that we've had grant programs, we've been we've had a hard time getting people to apply for those grants. And you know, my view has always been we're here for economic development, we're here to do good for the community and help out who we can, however we can. And I say that without disagreeing with what you're doing here. And it's, you're all encompassing. I can't think of anything that isn't included in that list of bullet points there, which is fine with me. I mean, it's so, you know, then it gets down to the grant committee timing of when, you know, I mean, we're only gonna, I mean, it's wonderful that now we're tapping out, we're using up our 200 grand that we have available. So that's great. I mean, that means we're doing good help and support for businesses in Cook County. So I really endorse that. Where else am I going with that? I mean, so it's all good. I don't know. I would be one to advocate for more flexibility and just, you know, figure out how we can help. Well, in your case, you know, it's like, yeah, it didn't quite fit. Let's figure out how we can make this project fit. You
Sure.
know, in helping a new business and existing businesses, it's all what we're about, I think. I mean, it's economic development authority, so that's where we are.
Specific, Chair, Mr. Chair, specific to eligibility of applicants, however, did you have any clarification or
No, it seems
points
like
on
you've
that?
got-
I guess
you've got everything covered,
All right,
so.
good.
Yeah.
the question I would ask, though, is it ties back to that testimony that we received from a short-term rental operator. This would be a place to insert language if we want to exclude certain types of businesses from this. I'm not recommending that we do so, but it's a consideration to make. Coming down the pipeline is marijuana dispensaries, which is also a political topic here in Cook County. Whether or not we agree with selling marijuana or not, we will have applicants in the future asking for funds to start up their businesses. So just like short-term rentals, which are a political issue here, we need to prepare ourselves, when I say ourselves, the board, to consider these types of businesses. So do we want to outright exclude short-term rentals, or do we want to allow them to submit an application providing that it's an eligible project and let the application stand for itself?
Yeah, I would propose the latter. The program objectives, in my limited experience in looking at these applications, what I feel tends to happen is that certainly applicants and perhaps sometimes even commissioners will gravitate towards here's what's available, or here's what's applicable, here's what's not applicable, jumping over the program objectives entirely. And yet, those are doing a lot of work here. And ultimately, it's the economic impact that the business will have that we should be considering, frankly, whether it's marijuana or something else, including, frankly, short-term rentals.
Sure.
Now, a short-term rental operation that employs one person and isn't growing to anything more than one person, maybe a house cleaner on a few hours a week, doesn't strike me as the sort of economic growth that we would necessarily support. Taking off short-term rentals entirely as a category might prevent us from looking at opportunities that we haven't even considered yet in that general category that maybe we would support because of the economic impact. So I'm less inclined to prescribe which businesses we want to exclude.
I agree. If I can respond, I think it's, I think you're absolutely right. I think if we accept applications based on these three criteria, then we can let applications stand on their own, develop their argument, present the facts, and assess it based on the evaluation process. Right.
I'd also agree with both statements.
Yeah, cool.
Having guidelines, objectives, eligible projects, applicants, I mean, it still comes down to the review committee and their decision on how it fits our program, or maybe it's what the available funds are, or how, I mean, this is not this is not a guarantee of getting funds from us. You know, this is just a, okay, here is a possible place for you to come, and, you know, I would encourage, maybe it's a waste of their time if they don't, well, certainly a waste, what you want your guidelines to do is sift out the people like government agencies and management fees and overhead and financing costs, so they don't waste their time making the application. But, you know, we have a lot of other stuff in the bucket there, but then, you know, it's up to our committee and the board here to say, yeah, that kind of fits or doesn't fit, and it's up to our group here to prioritize where we spend our funds.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we're trying to strike a balance, and you guys have done a great job on this, of over-prescribing and
Yeah.
taking the human and judgment element out. I don't think we want to do that. The other extreme is it becomes a black box, and no one has any idea why something got approved or not approved. And we're nowhere near that space, don't get me wrong. I think we're getting quite close to a very good balance in that space.
One other came up here during the discussion, comment or question. How do we disperse our funds? Is it an actual 75% match of submitted bills, or do we just write a check for $25,000?
If I could respond, we'll touch on that once we
Okay.
get to the grant agreement and,
Right.
and amounts. Just moving on, we just,
There's
I mean,
some things to talk about.
Yeah.
All right, very good.
that's a good question, though, and it's something that we've all spent a lot of time
Yeah,
wrestling with.
yeah.
So, moving on to eligible projects.
Yep.
The major, I guess, changes we did make in this section, we recommended categorizing instead of listing a bunch of different types of project. So previously, marketing expenses were expanded on, signs, billboards, whatever, different elements of marketing that we just put into one category for marketing, instead of listing things out. So the list looks smaller. We didn't omit anything from the list of eligible projects that was developed last year, but we did condense it. And I'm just looking at that list, and everything should be the same as last year. So those are examples of eligible project types. The ineligible expenses, more or less, are the same. There is one at the bottom that adds product inventory, ingredients, or materials for resale or promotion for consideration. So we didn't make a recommendation on whether or not to do that, but it is something I think worthy of our discussion. Does the EDA want to fund specifically items that are going to be sold? So as we were discussing earlier, we can buy a tool to make something. Do we want to also buy the material to make something that's going to be sold for profit? So it's something to consider. We don't have to make a decision right now. We've had lots of applicants, I think, in the past that have absorbed the cost of goods in their startup budget themselves as part of their matching requirement. But I don't know, I'm not aware of any previous applications that has sought funds to buy inventory. So it's something to think about. Any input on that would be appreciated, whether or not to keep that on the list of ineligible or not. I can tell you what
That
this.
corrects Commissioner Mills' question earlier, that she could not
Correct.
have applied for $10,000 for sweatshirts.
in this case.
Or materials for,
So this, our existing guidelines do not prohibit that. The proposal is to add.
Proposed, I
Yeah,
see.
so right now, our two applications that we just approved are in full compliance
Right.
with the guidelines.
So these are
Well-
suggestions.
Suggestions, and this is based on research. I'm not gonna say the industry standard is this, but it's very common in business development grant funds not to cover the cost of inventory items or materials or products that are gonna be sold. So it's,
I mean, that's what lines of credit are for. That's what, when you buy a product, you probably have a couple, 60 days to pay for it. I mean, hopefully you turn your product before you have to pay for it, ideally. So that's more of a banking thing. And that's where Peter comes in and helping with the banking relationships.
outside of
Not
that.
you,
Yeah.
Okay.
Peter Mott, excuse me.
Say,
I think a question just to pose to the board right now is, and this is just a thought, something to chew on right now, is the eligibility of an applicant or a project determined on a case-by-case basis? Or is the eligibility of an applicant or a project determined by the review committee. And what I'm getting at here is that I think we need to build out a little bit what's left up to the review committee to decide and what goes into the guidelines as criteria. So the obvious answer to my question about does the review committee determine eligibility for applicants is no, because a person has to be doing business in Cook County. They have to be registered with the state. So that's not something we're deciding. Where it gets a little fuzzy is I think the review committee does find themselves in a position where they might be deciding if a project on this list submitted by an applicant is in fact eligible. And I think we need to maybe just think about establishing a little more rigid criteria for project types so we can perhaps apply the evaluation criteria that we have been working on and then use our judgment and flexibility to make a case in the review process to go one way or the other. And this is just a question, because it gets a little fuzzy, I think, when the review committee is determining if a project is eligible, if that project is on the list of things that is eligible. So it's a thought. It's a thought, and I'd love to hear perspective for sure.
And, you know, I've been dealing with grants a long time too, but a lot of times the grant makers will have a prioritized list of eligibility. So, for instance, you know, maybe it's just not a list of bullet points, maybe there's some sub-bullets here. Certainly, equipment is something that we're probably doing, construction of new building and expansion of buildings, repairs, maybe not so much. You know, I'm trying to look for something else here, but maybe there's you don't want to exclude just offhand, but you don't want to encourage people to apply for sort of things that are maybe lower on our priority list, you might say. I don't know exactly how to word that.
But I think you could have eligible projects and still decline the application.
Yeah,
It just doesn't
absolutely.
meet the impact that we're hoping to get.
Yep.
You don't think, there are other parts of the application that don't measure up. So I think leaving it open is fine, you know, because you can, if it doesn't, it's not a good application, it's declined for another reason, it's okay.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Shackleton, and I'd say that I think one of the structural issues that we can address to be better stewards of the minimal or the limited amount of funding that we have is an idea that we suggested to condense the time periods in which we review grants so that there's actual competition. And I know in the past, there wasn't enough applicants to, you know, consistently use all the money, but that is not going to be an issue going forward. The grant committee and members of the EDA are really interested in investing in the vibrancy of the economy here and being good stewards. And I think, having been on grant committees for a long time and written many grants, like, the issue that we have is that there's just one thing to look at a time. And so how do you determine which of the, let's say, 25 applicants we're going to get this year is the best use of our dollars? It's that best use versus, yeah, okay, that's okay, that'll probably work. We don't get to have that conversation, so I think by squishing them together a little bit more, we'll get that. I understand the concern.
Have grant cycles then.
Yeah, grant cycles.
Just feedback on the question regarding eligible projects, rather. You know, I view eligible applicants as strictly objective. It's either yes or no. Eligible projects, rather, there's some degree of judgment there, but you've listed out, I think, enough specificity to clearly separate the wheat from the chaff. But to Commissioner Shackleton's point on judgment and the human element, again, that's where program objectives come into play. That's arguably the most subjective of the areas, and that's where I think a lot of the discussion, maybe even argument around one grant application versus the other might come into play. Ultimately, how much of an impact will it have whether it's this type of business or that type of business in Cook County. So from my perspective, there's a nice mix here between the subjective and the objective that's, I think, fair to applicants and provides the grant committee and ultimately the board, I think, enough flexibility to make the right decisions.
Absolutely. I think I'm aligned with the review committee members as well, and with what you just stated. In the next section, we can move on to grant amounts, but we have made a recommendation, I think, as a committee to adopt a quarterly review system or cycle for applications. I believe that we had a consensus on that at our last meeting to address the points that Commissioner Anderson just made, and you too as well, Mr. President. So we would like to suggest that, get rid of the rolling deadline and establish quarterly deadlines, January, April, July, October, whatever fits the seasonality of a lot of our businesses, so applicants have time to submit an application for projects that are going to begin in the spring, summer, to address the hyper-busy seasonality of our community. So,
Yeah, I don't think it's asking applicants too much in this space to have enough foresight and planning to put together an application long before the project is scheduled to start. So I don't think that's too onerous of an ask. And importantly, it also provides applicants some clear understanding on when answers will come, when monies might start to flow. So it isn't just a big question mark. So I like that idea.
very well. I'll make a note of that, and when we present the final draft of these in a month, we'll be sure to include that. Grant agreements, I think the only suggestion here would be to achieve some standardization, perhaps at least for the benefit of our director who puts these things together. They come into play in the reporting side of things too. So if we have 16 different grant awards from last year with 16 different agreements and timelines and expectations and responsibilities, it gets a little fuddled and we probably lose sight of the whole purpose of them anyway. So this is going to take a lot of work. It's not going to happen today, but I would recommend that we spend some time once these guidelines are done, once the application is done, and once our evaluation process is complete, that we look at standardizing some agreement language based on project type or award amount, whatever, but something to organize that process.
May I ask a question as staff?
Mm-hmm.
Does this include the guideline updates scoring ranking system? Because that would be extremely helpful for transparency.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think we've, if I may, our review committee has been working a lot on this and applications, and we slowed things down a bit so we could have this discussion, but the rubric it's underway.
It's not a rubric but it is a scoring system.
And who knows what it'll end up. Right now, we don't have a finished product, but it's a concept that's in play right now that will be developed to aid us in our evaluation process.
Great.
Moving on to the match requirement. Open to recommendations on how to best present the concept that we are trying to apply to grant amounts of $5,001 to $25,000. We've tackled it in many different ways, but we have yet to come up with a universal approach that makes sense to more people than not. Anybody on the board that has recommendations, wants to take a stab at it, welcome to.
Or in the public.
Or the public, absolutely. The application itself, this is something that we've spent.
Step in.
Yeah.
Can I ask our most recent recipient, what would have been more clear to you to explain or for you to immediately understand the match requirement?
Your email was very well spoken as far as just outlining the maximum, giving a perfect example of the maximum amount of funds that could be available. I think also including a minimum amount of the funds being available, so that then you get the comparison between the amount that would be granted to the applicant and the amount required by the applicant to match. Then having a minimum and a maximum, they'll be able to use that as a scale to guess, okay, this is what I'm dealing with per my amount in the project. But once you outlined it to me that the grant amount and the match amount is dependent on the project amount, then it became a lot easier to understand. And I think that's the clarification that was missing for my part.
Yeah, there's a couple of examples in here, and in fact, you've actually built a quick little formula. So if I've got a $22,500 project, I'll be able to type that in and clearly understand what the grant amount associated with that might be, or conversely, what my total needs to be if I'm seeking $25,000. So I think that's going to work well.
Application, we've looked at what's required and what's supplemental or encouraged. The list looks a little different for the application requirements. Just a quick note is that we still are strongly encouraging applicants to consult with the EDA director or the Small Business Development Center consultant prior to submitting an application. PMOD is a great resource for developing application supplements, and getting your application at least on the table to be considered, if not to the finish line. So the required applications actually have changed based on our last meeting, I believe, and we're no longer requiring a business plan or financial projections. We're requiring simply a completed application form with any additional pages attached, a project budget listing sources and uses that include itemized project costs, sources of funding, formal estimates, etc. But we did remove that business plan requirement and projections from the requirement list. Does anybody on the review committee want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So our current resource of Superstar Pete Mott, who is one person, as he said, he's had how many people this month or in the last month?
5 new people, 30 clients.
30 clients. So unfortunately, Pete doesn't have the capacity to teach business development skills to 30 people in 1 month. There are programs that Pete and I have discussed that would potentially expand our ability to include that in the future as an expectation, such as the SCORE program that I've talked about previously. But with our current just recognition of what's available to people, we understand that many businesses in town here are able to be run without that specific technical knowledge. And so we think we can review with basic understanding of budgeting without a full business plan. But we are all about building our collective and community capacity around these things, and hope to see the competition get more fierce and the returns on the investment even greater over the next couple of years.
May I make a, sorry.
I come from, big corporate world, and certainly we use business plans extensively, but for the small business owners in the room that care to answer, do you all have business plans?
Are you asking them, like the board or everybody in the room?
Yeah. No, okay, thank you.
I mean, my comment would be, these grants, this grant program is to create success in whatever business we're trying to support. Finances and dollars up, in their hands is one of them. Certainly, training on how to do business is another one, and having, doesn't have to be a full-blown business plan, but there, some sort of, how am I going to use this money, what kind of operation budget. It may be pretty simple, but, I don't think it's a bad thing to force people to think about how they're going to use the money and how they're going to pay it back and how they're going to make a living.
I tend to agree.
It's not a bad thing. I mean, it's a two-way thing. I mean, it's you want to, big part of Pete's job, and I asked earlier about is he getting the resources he needs from Northland Foundation, and I know Pat, relied heavily on UMD and the people there, really helps.
Right, I'll just say, I mean, I've taken small business development courses to learn how to create a business plan, and I can't remember scores training, I think it's about 20 hours. So 20 hours, so a lot of the problem that we have in terms of the conversation we're having is just a lack of information, right? So Pete could do that if all of them showed up at the same time.
Yeah.
And he was running a class for them. But if they come in willy-nilly, random, and why do people apply last minute? Because they just found out, how many of the people who applied to you, those 30 people, just found out about it? Okay, well, I would guess it's a lot. I would guess it's about half. They find out about it and they apply. So we're working on communication. That's why we have the WTIP thing going. That's why we've written in new expectations around reporting so that grantees will be personally invested in getting the word out and spreading communication so that it can be a change dynamic in time.
It may not be us or Pete, but, maybe we can rope in higher ed, and I think maybe they have done.
Absolutely.
Oh, they do that.
Yeah, they have done those
Yeah.
programs, so,
Yeah.
Regularly.
My point earlier is that an established business has a proven track record, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily expect or even need to see a business plan from that grant application. I would, but if somebody new, starting up, a couple years old, struggling, or just not struggling, but just, going from ground up to something, then I would kind of want to see what's your idea? What do you,
Yeah.
what's your plan, right? But I think that's why I wanted to see it removed from required down to supplementals, just because you get some of those well-established businesses that want, looking for a grant, and I don't need to see their business plan.
So I think
Yeah.
in my conversations with many people in this room regarding this topic is, what's the function of a plan that's presented to a committee for review? It's to demonstrate forethought, budgeting, the general concepts of here's where I am, whether I'm a new business, startup, an existing business, here's where I need to go, and here's how I'm going to get there. So perhaps consider the term like a business plan that addresses the scope of your project. So if you're starting a company from the ground up, we're going to expect a business plan that matches the scope of your startup. If you're buying a piece of equipment, you're a 25-year business in Cook County, well, the scope of your project request is going to look a lot different than the scope of a project for a startup. But we still need to see where you're at. Here I am, 25, 30 years in business. I need to be able to increase my production, and this is going to help me. This is where I need to go, and this is how I'm going to get there. So I think a simple statement, a plan, a project plan, a business plan that addresses the scope of your project might fit.
Well, that's what it does say, project budget, sources, and their narrative is about telling the story of what they're going to do with the money and how it's going to work, what the return on the investment is. Like, those are other answers to other questions in the application.
Sure. Sure, no, I get that, but I see the application questions as the organization's attempt to have the applicant demonstrate how their program aligns with the EDA strategic plan. A business plan demonstrates the project itself that is going to help that business align with the mission statement to make this place a better place to live and work. So it's a consideration. I'm not for or against, but I do think there's a strong case to be made for a plan that addresses the scope of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, especially, I think, to Commissioner Shackleton's point, brand-new businesses, because the project is the business. And if there's no plan for the project, there's no plan for the business, we'd have to take a pretty hard look at that application. I want to buy X to do what with?
We agree with that, and that's why we wrote, it may be required.
Okay.
So if we get an application and they're new and we need more fleshed out, then we say, this is required for you.
Terrific, okay. Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, I would just add that, so these are public dollars that we're putting out there, and I think we need to have a pretty high standard for distributing those. And I'm really impressed with this draft revision of the guidelines. And I agree that the demand, as word gets out, the demand will be greater. I don't think this is meant as emergency funding, like if someone walks in and says, hey, we need money now, like, that's not what this is about. This is about thoughtful, methodical planning to really grow a long-lasting business. That's not just like a one-off, it's something that will be sustainable, and that does require planning. So I just don't know to what degree we need to require, because depending on the business, a business plan can be quite extensive. So I think there needs to be, yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I think our standards need to be high.
And won't that come out with committee work? Because, you know, you're reading these things, I mean, if I was on the committee, I'd be reading these things, maybe several of them at a time, hopefully, and you're gonna have questions, I mean, everybody's got pretty broad experience in business, and you can look at something and say, I can't see how this pencils out, you know, so then you go back and ask the further questions.
Part of what one of the problems that we have, I think, is that we receive applications that don't have the components that we need to make a recommendation, one or the other. So we turn them around and we ask for additional, and that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I'm not proposing that we require a business plan for everybody or anybody, but know that it will extend the time that it takes to review your application. And the idea that we can encourage or may request things, I think makes it difficult perhaps for somebody who is helping an applicant build their application, present something that's a total package. Because a business plan may be required, supporting documents may be requested, financial documents may be requested, evidence of funds may be requested. So we have lots of like supplements that we're just telling you, like, you don't need them right now, but you might need them in the future. So I'm not opposed to things as is. It will, until we start generating multiple applications on our quarterly review cycle, it will require us to extend the process. That 60 days is probably going to become more of a reality if we don't implement a deadline and increase the traction. But I'm good leaving it as is for now. I'm not suggesting we change. It's a question to pose, and I think our review committee made this recommendation.
I see some movement over there.
Yeah, it's too late, it's gone. Evan, thank you.
Oh, you forgot.
Commissioner Mills.
Yeah, and getting a loan from a bank for a business requires a business plan generally, and we want to be more flexible than that. The reason for that, the flexibility is to really promote this, and maybe things aren't working out on that end, or just disorganization or whatever. The bank's reason for that is to make sure it's viable and they'll get their return, right? And we want to do something similar, although more generous, is by giving money, public dollars, to a business. And so that's just where I understand a full business plan is probably over the top for that required, and maybe project budget sources and uses with itemized costs and sources of funding might be enough. And I am new to this, well, I was a substitute once for this committee, and so I'm not in it like you guys are. So I really appreciate your perspectives, and we'll really lean on your judgment. But
I'd be very concerned if there was no mention of business plan in here whatsoever, and we were just going to punt on the whole thing. But as Commissioner Anderson reminds me, it's in here as a supplemental material. It may be required. I would encourage the committee to, if in doubt, pressure test it and see, because a business plan can take any number of different forms, right? We can get quite a simple one or a massively detailed one. We don't want to be prescriptive in that space necessarily, but so.
Commissioner Mills, I concur with your desire to uphold the highest standards and all of that. I would say I learned from Marais some examples that were emergency funds that were about allowing existing businesses to be maintained here, that were providing useful services, conditions happened, they needed the funding, and it allowed everyone to benefit from that business being able to exist. It's providing a service. So even that, I think we don't want to rule out.
Well,
And
those,
that's
we
why
had
the-
emergency funds in the past.
Yeah.
Like, that was a thing.
Oh, I see, I see.
Yeah.
Heidi?
Yes. So I am known for, I guess, just saying it like it is. So being the newbie as I am, I've been in the role 5 months, so I'm just going to speak on what I've seen so far. I think bottom line, and forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, somebody stop me, but this program, because there were no guidelines to this program until last year, and how I've seen it ran in the past and now as I've been here, I think there was a culture, to nobody's fault, a culture of this program, anyone could walk in the door, whether they had a business or not, and receive grant funds, simply put. And I think that the bottom line here is we're just trying to develop some sort of process that anyone can use, and an extremely objective process that, you know, grants aren't given based on who you know, or how long you've been in business, or whether you're a startup, whether you're not, whether we like your business, whether we don't. So that's kind of the bottom line, and as your staff person that you hired to recommend for this economic development program, I would say let's just make these guidelines as objective as possible and remove the small town element of it and treat it like a program as anyone coming in the door as an applicant. We review the application based on the strength of the application and how it aligns with the strategic plan for the EDA, and that's it. So forgive me if that was too forward, but that's just me speaking as a new in this role as of 5 months and what I've seen, and wanting to protect the integrity of the EDA moving forward. And so I think that's the best way, and I appreciate the numerous meetings that the committee has been spending on this, and I haven't been part of those meetings, and so, thank you so much as volunteers, and, you're on this commission appointed, and a couple of you are elected, and, but it's mainly volunteer work, so thank you so much for that, and anything I can do as your staff person, please let me know, and I'll be there to do what I can.
Thank you.
So we're only about, 2/3 of the way through this. We're going to get into the procedure,
Lord.
review process, and evaluation. I assume you want to go through section by section?
Yeah, I mean, this was scheduled as a discussion.
Yep.
So however much discussion we want to have will determine how long it takes.
Sure.
But I do think it's important to just hit a couple more points on this.
Great.
Everybody had access to this, they can read it, and the discussion doesn't end here. You can,
So point of order, we're doing this discussion now, you're gonna rewrite this or
Yeah.
take this input. Is this gonna be in presentation form for our next meeting, or just
Yes.
the second draft or final draft, or what's your anticipation?
We're hoping to propose the final
Okay.
draft next,
Okay.
so if we'd love to have your review. We do have we can also, before the next meeting, get to you the review criteria and scoring system, I think, and so that we could approve the whole package maybe at the next meeting. Even so, I would suggest that we, if we're going to make changes, go to quarterly, that we do that, some future point of time. It's going to have to be for next year, for instance, because we spent most of the money.
Right. Give us more than a day or two to review that then.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
This is great. Thank you very much.
So if you're going to batch them, and I think it's a great idea to batch them into quarters, that ought to come with a timeline for both us to hold ourselves accountable to, but also for applicants to
Sure.
be aware of what to expect. Regarding the operationalizing the total project amount, the record keeping associated with that, and the reimbursement associated with that, many of these are small businesses, and so I think, as in the past, we'll want to continue in the future to reimburse on an ongoing basis, to not put someone $31,000 in the hole before they can get $25,000 from us. But using that example, so if it's a $31,250 project, that's what gets booked into the system, which might be nothing more than an Excel spreadsheet. I would propose that the first $6,250 in, I'll call them receipts that get submitted, are not reimbursed. So we backload you front load the contribution from the applicant, and we backload the reimbursement. So $31,250 is the total project amount. The first $6,250 is not reimbursed, but has to be substantiated with documentation. And then the subsequent $25,000 is reimbursed as the receipts are,
Well,
please.
yeah, what we have built into is a multiplier. So if someone has a $31,250 grant, and they submit receipts, the multiplier would be 0.2. So if they gave us a $1,000 receipt, they'd get $800 back. And that 0.2 keeps us on track.
Okay.
So until that final invoice comes in, as long as we're multiplying it by 0.2, we're gonna be perfect at the end of it.
Okay.
And we created a multiplier
Sure.
for the 10% as well. So that's built into the system too. So we don't have to worry about, getting out of sync.
Okay.
So,
I like that
But-
better. yeah.
That's
way
fine.
better.
But to be clear, though, the project gets recorded as $31,250, not $25. Yeah.
And to be clear, that's for the future, right? Because we haven't
Yes.
been doing it that way in the
correct.
past.
You're right. No, that's in
Okay.
this, which hasn't been approved yet.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
More fun just to give away money than talk about all this stuff. But I get it. It's fine.
Anything else from the grant committee?
Alex, do you want
This
to
is
mention
terrific
anything
work.
before we
I want to point out under reporting, so the evaluation criteria we're still developing in terms of what we will look at and how we will score those, but
Sure.
under reporting, there's the additional piece of having the grantees involved in the communication around this, including, we'll give a list on their reporting thing of several options, if we approve this, several options, ways in which they could be public-facing with their, what they got and how they benefited and what the return on the investment is for everybody. And I think that's going to really help us turn up the dial on how many people know about this. And so that's exciting.
Yeah.
Great.
Can I make just one point on that?
Yeah.
I think that's included, I changed it to may, but I would be totally in favor to making that a requirement. And the only reason it's a may is because as we develop the reporting system to track all of these things, as we develop our grant agreements and build the system
Yeah,
and, have the resources to do it.
I object to May. I wouldn't
Well,
want it.
let's strike it, but the other thing to think about as well is that we might have a requirement for a written report in the event of an audit of this grant program. We can't show a social media clip as proof of a written report when it comes time to audit our grant program, which I think is a possibility, maybe not a likelihood. We might just want to require a written trail and offer options to do other things, but that's,
Well, Commissioner, I don't know, I can't do it right. Bibi Gaduch?
Good.
Your last name?
go ahead.
Okay. I think we have an accountability to track what has happened, as I've talked about many times. I think that we need to be the ones to follow up and create that auditable trail. It's, yes, you can ask for the written reports, but I know from Director Crampett's conversation about all the hunting down she's had to do with different things, that another thing on her plate to follow up on isn't likely as beneficial that way. But I've proposed a variety of different ways in which we can check and get back information about the success of our intervention and the return on that, and study what has worked in the past, what hasn't, what are getting the better returns, and involving higher ed in helping us to conduct those evaluations. So I entirely agree we should have an auditable trail. I just don't think their written reporting is going to be the best source for that.
Great. So my comment I had written in preparation for this section is simply that the review committee has come up with several wonderful ideas for additional reporting requirements determining the return on investment, among other things. And that section on reporting will expand as we get to it, essentially, as we develop the resources to do it. Right now, we've got guidelines, we have an application to look at, we have a evaluation system, we have agreements, and we have reporting. So I think it's something we've acknowledged as important to do and improve, and I think we'll do it as we get to it.
Sounds like committee work, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say there's several outstanding reports that have been due that I haven't had, hasn't been capacity for me to follow up on. This is one tool and one program of the EDA, so it's difficult to put all of my resources and time just to this one program, even though it is almost 40% of the budget and part of the EDA. But I definitely think we should hire somebody or partner with somebody.
Graduate students.
Exactly. Rather than me doing that, but I'm more than willing to do it, but just making sure we know where my time is being spent and prioritized, how you want me to be spending my time as a board.
Some of the qualitative outputs of these projects, it would be nice to know and to publicize, but at the very least, especially as it relates to the auditable elements, we're not reimbursing anyone, of course, until the documentation comes in.
Correct.
So
Right.
the application plus all that documentation that results in the disbursements, I would have to think would go a long way to satisfying an auditor.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's the end of our recommendations. Some questions that we had. Thanks for the feedback. We made notes, and we can continue to amend this document.
Yeah,
Over the
and
next
some
few
of us
weeks.
might send you notes after the
do.
fact, after we've had a
That's
chance
the
to
idea.
have a beer with this. So,
Yeah.
okay,
If I may, can I make one more,
please.
pose one more question? That's what we're here for, right? I've done a lot of research on grants, as many of you have, and specifically for grants involving property purchasing or development, there's some requirements, like providing your property tax certificate. It's kind of a standard, especially when it gets into like state tax dollars, like through deed. That's something that's required when you're applying for funds to develop a piece of real estate. Just a thought, we have lots of, for one, with my testimony earlier was a real estate transaction. Something to consider, just to increase accountability, adding that to a requirement for property development projects, just something to think about. The other one is another standard, especially in the state of Minnesota, is to require a certificate showing your active registration and good standing with the Minnesota Secretary of State. We ask for it. We just ask for you to be registered. Most application processes for similar grant programs just ask you to go ahead and sign to your account and print one out and include it into your application. So additional requirements, I know, just a consideration to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for everyone's patience as we've gone through the grant program. It's an important area of our business, as you can imagine, so thank you for that. Discussion item B, office space. Heidi.
Yes, and it is 5:45. I don't know if you've ever had a regular EDA meeting that has lasted this long, so I'm going to go as fast as possible. Basically, the EDA leases office space at 425 West Highway 61, Suite B. The EDA has a lease with Drosera Holdings. Jeremy is the EDA's landlord there, and the lease goes through June of 2026. Currently, the EDA shares office space with the SBDC and also the HRA. And I had noticed that there was an odd arrangement as far as how office space was paid for between the entities. And so I just threw out the simplest idea I came up with and said, well, why don't we split the cost 50-50 with the HRA, EDA, HRA. It turns out that that's a little too simple So HRA Chair Bill Gabler has proposed something different than that, and the HRA is going to talk about that tomorrow at their meeting, which I'll be at. Jeff Brand is here, Executive Director of the HRA, and so we've been talking, Peter Clissold and I and Bill Gabler and Jeff Brand about this office space situation. So we feel confident that it'll be an acceptable and exciting partnership going forward. No problems there. But the memo in your packet said, mentioned the 50/50 sharing rent. It's probably going to end up being more like, I don't know if you.
I haven't read it yet.
It's not 50/50. So the EDA will basically be paying more than the HRA, which makes sense because the EDA has 2 people in the office and the HRA has 1. So basically, we'll figure that out and let you know, but I guess I basically wanted, our landlord, the EDA's landlord wanted just you to be aware of this. And so there's asking permission from the EDA for Chair, or EDA President Clissold and I to sign with Jeremy, the EDA's landlord, just so he knows that we know that everyone knows what's going on. Is that okay?
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Director Krampitz and Peter Crystal to sign the attached MOU.
With any changes that might come, I would second that.
As needed, yeah.
Yeah.
The next item, quickly, Cedar Grove Business Park entrance sign. The EDA talked about this last month. It was the consensus last month that the EDA did not agree with funding any part of a new entrance sign for Cedar Grove Business Park. I went ahead as your staff person and went ahead and asked for mock-ups and estimates to be requested, just to show the EDA what a new sign might look like, what the cost might be, just to keep the conversation rolling, going forward, whether this information will be provided to the private property owners in the business park to figure out how they might want to fund their new sign, or whether one of the property owners wants to fund the entire sign and himself, or whatever it may be. I just wanted to bring it to your attention and ask if there was any new or different input from your discussion last month about this sign.
Yeah, I guess I would just take issue with one reflection you've got there. I don't think there was a consensus amongst the EDA that we were not going to fund the sign. There might have been feedback from the EDA,
Okay.
individual members. I happen to be of the opinion that the business park started off as an EDA project, we've successfully sold everything but I guess, one piece.
Right.
And the community recognizes this as an EDA project, and we're not 100% out of it yet. In fact, I think this would be a great ending, a nice coda to the business park, to have a quality sign that we can take pride in, to demonstrate what the EDA has been able to pull off here. A sign that either was or still is in my view, an eyesore. It's a bit of a disgrace, frankly. And we've got a beautiful business park there without any sort of appropriate signage. I think I'd like the EDA to be participating in this, and the fact that you're working with these folks to do the design work is certainly part of that participation. But depending on the level of interest from the businesses within the business park, I'd also like to consider that the EDA even financially participate, if not all of it, but to a degree. Because I think it would leave the business park, I think, in good hands and good shape.
Mr. Chair, yeah. I've also received feedback from, business park owners, and they felt it was a slap in the face for us to not help, at least, with that. And I said, wow, yeah, I see your point. They just felt like for a number of the sales, it wasn't an easy process, and there was maybe additional costs that were not seen right away, and it's been a long process getting this developed and filling it, with many years of downs. And so I would agree that it would be, I really appreciate you asking for this. And if this design certainly matches the homes just west of there, I think it's fine. I would request that it be expandable if another business decides to join the slate there. And I don't know practically how that could be done, but I think we should.
Make it taller. Except for Nordic, everybody got a pretty sweet deal on the property.
Which is true.
So, but I don't disagree, there might be, it would be $3,000 a person, a business, if they were, went past a hat. If the EDA participated to some level, half, now you're talking $1,500, so maybe there's a sweet spot there where
It's worth talking about.
it's worth talking about, yeah. This at least gives us something to go and talk to businesses about.
Nice work.
Yeah, I would just suggest, it's a great mock-up, and if there's a cost-sharing option to this, perhaps EDA funds the main infrastructure, and individual businesses fund their individual nameplates. That would probably put the shoulder of the cost on EDA, but be a nice little olive branch farewell gift. Anyway, that's it.
That's a good idea.
So Molly, I don't see Molly's name on there.
It's on the side of the road.
Oh, she didn't want one?
Oh, okay.
No, no.
Irony.
But she's on the other side of that.
I know, still a business park. but,
Yeah, yeah,
That's hard to-
exactly.
I know, but I wouldn't know that. If you were driving up the
Yeah.
trail, you wouldn't know that she's part of the.
True.
park,
Right.
So what would next steps then be on this? You've got the mock-up, you're going to go back to the businesses and,
I could go back. Last month I reached out and got the input I received so far, but I didn't have these mock-ups
Oh,
yet.
okay.
And so, yeah, go back to the businesses and I guess, stating that the EDA doesn't really have a financial structure yet, or hasn't decided, if and what amount to be contributed, and get their feedback and whether or not they'd be open to paying,
Participation.
if they see some value.
if they see value,
Yeah,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm more inclined with the 50/50 thing. This money's not in the budget for this year, for sure,
Yeah.
so that's one thing. But if we were asking them if they would contribute something like 50/50 or 25/75, and then gauge their interest, if you still get 7 people to raise their hand, then I think that
Yeah.
I'd be more inclined to move forward then,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So to clarify,
Yeah.
the EDA would consider paying 50% of the sign
Right.
with whoever else wants to be part of the project, picking up the other 50%.
Correct.
Okay.
If they show some enthusiasm for that, if they're all aboard, if we get 7 people like that, then I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, then I think it's something to work with and go forward.
And, Steve Serba does have property and he uses it too. So, there's 9.
Well, Steve said he doesn't want a nameplate.
Okay.
Yeah. But he might contribute anyway.
He might,
Yep,
yeah.
Yeah.
yep.
Maybe I can have his even though I don't have a lot.
Well, he's got 2 lots.
He has 2 properties.
He's
there.
got 2, he's got the storage
Yeah.
facility and the laundry.
He's found a new location for the laundry, so
Oh, he is going somewhere else?
he's going into the Bausch building.
Oh, the Belch building.
Good job on the signs. Yeah, keep moving that forward.
And as a reminder, or as a refresher, former EDA President Steve Serba, this was his idea in the first place, late last year, to replace the existing sign. And so this idea didn't come out of wherever. It came from former EDA Chair, Steve Serba. Okay, finally, next thing is, I don't have an update on this. This is Commissioner Hedstrom's update, and that is the possible assisted living project.
Did you have you gotten anything from Whiffley? Okay, good.
Yes,
You have a blue folder there. I found my folder on assisted living,
Okay.
and since I joined the EDA, it's undetermined when that was, but I've wanted to promote
Before
assisted
the
living.
records, yeah.
Promote assisted living, and we got close a couple times, and the last time, the partners we had, we got into, I've shared those proposals and designs, and they looked around, they said, we can't do it, we don't have the people, and we can't hire the people because there's no housing. So, as I was awake in the early morning, finally I said, well, now we have 81 new units coming in. Gunflint View is, we got 56 units, and the Heights development will have 36. There's a couple other housing projects that are coming in, and it's all of a sudden, I think the issue of no place for people to live has gone away. And I thought, well, this is probably a good time. In conversations with, I have a lot of conversations. There's a guy by the name of Opitz that kind of does assisted living. He got a lot excited. He drove up here. I had coffee with him. He did a tour around, and I haven't heard back, but heard through my other friend that he was impressed here. And his evaluation was, need is not in question. I mean, there's enough population here to have the need, although, having a new study would be great. So that's the genesis of that. The property that was first looked at is over across from law enforcement. We handed that property off to HRA, but they still have it kind of dedicated for assisted living, and, I hope that if we have a proposal from Whiffley or whoever it is to do an updated study on need, our board and HRA can share in the cost of that study. The last one was about $12,000 10 years ago.
It's like half a sign.
That's, yeah, we could, so,
It's exciting, thank you.
yeah, so I'm a proponent. It sounds like most people are on board.
Yeah, 100%. That's amazing.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Committee and commissioner reports.
Have you guys
We've
met?
heard.
Have we?
I don't have anything else to add.
Heard from,
Has allocated more.
So I've reported on the Heights project. I'm part of the real estate investment group in town, which are doing this. We're looking at maybe an early June groundbreaking. KGM will be up in the next couple of weeks, starting to clear the property. Charlie Lamb will be in, starting to do some blasting, and I'm told that in a meeting just this week that the dynamic homes is what their dynamic home product. They're going to start start into their assembly line May 19th, I think it is. So then it's like a 30-day process to build those. They're going to be delivering those as they build them. So I've been working with their traffic guy, trying to find a place to, these are not insignificant
units or trucks?
units.
Yeah.
They're 64 feet long and from 11 to 15 feet wide. We have located a few spots and haven't perfected those yet, but, we hope to have those. So by 4th of July, you'll see, those things parked around, and I think August 1st they'll start, and there'll be cement work being done, all the footings, and by August 1st or thereabouts, they'll start swinging these into place, and they go up pretty quickly once that happens. So.
Great, thank you. Just regarding the golf course, if I may, so the listing went live with SVN Northco the latter part of March. I think it was the last week in March. The offering memorandum, which I would simply call a listing flyer, but it's 45 pages long, so we have to say it's a memorandum, was shared, I think, with each of you. It's worth taking a look at. It really represents, I think, the golf course in a terrific light. There have been 18 groups thus far that have showed a significant interest in looking at the golf course. 14 additional prospects are kind of circling the wagons a little bit. They haven't, they've signed into the North Coast system, but they haven't provided the background information that the first 18 have. So Northco is generally happy with the level of interest, given the time of year that we're currently in. Next steps, and this is now being scheduled with some of these 18, are in-person visits. They're waiting for the snow to stop, as am I. And with that, in the next couple of weeks, we'll have real live prospects touring the golf course. And so hopefully, some offers resulting from that. But that's what's going on with the golf course currently. Okay. Any other committee reports?
Can we hear Taconite Harbor update?
Yeah, that's number 9, director reports. That's my only update. So, the Taconite Harbor Committee, which is Commissioners Anderson, Mills, and Benson, who's not here today. As you know, they met and we put out the RFP, the request for proposals, for a strategic plan for the Taconite Harbor site in Schroeder. That RFP was released on March 28th, I believe the exact date was. The turnaround time for proposals was like 3 weeks later. It was extended. The due date for proposals was extended to Monday, April 28th.
2 weeks, 2 weeks.
2 more weeks. So basically giving more time for more proposals to come in and for better proposals to come in. Commissioner Anderson has been helping me get the word out with different firms that might want to propose. I have received many follow-up questions from potential proposers, and I am confident that the committee, the selection committee, will have plenty of work to do in scoring proposals once they come in the door. There's a meeting scheduled for the committee, the selection committee, to review proposals on Monday, May 5th. That'll be a virtual meeting. And from there, the goal is that if the committee is able to choose one before the next EDA meeting on May 20th, then we would be coming to you as the EDA to officially enter into a contract with a strategic planner to come up with a plan for the Taconite Harbor site. So that's really exciting.
Thank you.
That is, can I request that we get the proposals on a rolling basis rather than all at once, given that it's the end of the semester and May 5th is, just so we can read them as they come?
Yes, as they're submitted, I would forward them on.
Thanks.
And then there will definitely be, I know you're not calling it a rubric anymore, but like a scoring, a chart.
Sure.
So that the committee can score each of the proposals.
And are we, I'm assuming we're expected to have read them all before the May 5th meeting?
I would hope so.
Okay, yeah. So that's why I want to.
Yep. I have a feeling, though, that most proposals won't come in until the last minute.
I see.
So April
Yeah.
28th.
That's normal.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. That takes us then to the conclusion of what might be our longest meeting in some time. Before I close it down, I do want to just let everyone know, I won't be here for the next meeting, which is Tuesday, May the 20th, but our Vice President, Commissioner Hedstrom, has graciously agreed to chair the meeting, and we'll do a
That's
much
the
better
duty.
job
That's
than I
the
can ever
duty.
do. Yes. Okay, so thank you for that.
The job.
And I have officially made the request with the support of Chair, Vice Chair, and Mayor Benson that the EDA meetings be relocated to the new City Hall. So pending approval of that by the folks at City Hall, potentially the May 20th EDA meeting will be at Grand Marais City Hall. Stay tuned.
Very good. Okay. So with that, I need to make a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Good.